Brad, and thank you, the viewers of BRADTV. This is my first time ever on BRADTV, and because it's in Korean, I can't say that I'm, I've been watching this for 10 years, but I'm grateful for my opportunity to meet Brad 10 years ago, actually at a wonderful Korean church in New Jersey. And I'm grateful that I had an opportunity 10 years ago, as it turned out, to come and teach and preach and answer questions in Korea. And I'm grateful for the Korean Christian community that does love Israel, and more who are seeking. So I'm grateful to Brad. I'm grateful to BRADTV to cover these type of issues, the films that he's made, and this opportunity to be with you all on this network. This is Israel's darkest hour. But in the darkness, the light shines very strongly, brightly. And this is the moment, right? The world is abandoning Israel. That's terrible, but it means it's an opportunity for those of us who love Israel because we love Jesus, we understand the Bible, for us to stand faithfully. And the Jewish people are noticing. The people of Israel are noticing. The government of Israel is noticing that their most faithful friends in the world are people who love Jesus. And so I hope this interview on BRADTV is helpful to you, to the Korean church, and that you'll share it. Take the link and share it with people on social media to help them think about these things, because there's a blessing. Starting in the book of Genesis chapter 12, God says, I will bless those who bless Israel, the descendants of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and the nation of Israel. There's a blessing. I will bless those who bless you, but those who curse you, I will curse. I think we all know which side of that equation we want to be on, and I'm grateful to BRADTV that you are on the side of blessing Israel and the Jewish people and being a witness to the Jewish people in the name of Jesus, and it's an honor to be with you. God bless you, and I hope this program is helpful. Thank you.
Hello, this is Richard and Caroline Hyde with just a few of our 18 grandkids.
Wow.
And we want to thank you guys so much for your love and your prayers and your faithfulness and just being good stewards. Thank you.
Yes, we love you all at BRADTV. We are so grateful for you and for your faithfulness and your kindness to us. And these are actually some of Ariel and Shayla's children who you know. And so, what do you guys have to say?
Todaraban BRADTV.
They just said, thank you so much, BRADTV. We love you.
We love you. Bye-bye.
Shalom.
지금부터 20여 년 전인 2001년의 어느 날 미국의 무명 소설가는 이슬람 극진 테러리스트들이 미국의 여객기를 납치해서 미국의 주요 도시를 공격하고 또 이에 보복 공격하기 위해서 미국은 중동 여러 나라들과 전쟁을 벌인다라는 내용의 가상 소설을 쓰고 있었습니다. 이때까지만 해도 이 무명 작가의 가상 소설에 대해서 깊게 관심을 갖는 사람들은 별로 없었습니다. 왜냐하면 내용 자체가 너무나 비현실적이었기 때문에 그랬다는 것이죠. 그러나 2001년 9월 11일 이 무명 작가가 썼던 가상 소설의 내용이 현실에서 일어나는 아주 놀랍고 충격적인 일들이 벌어집니다. 2001년 9월 11일 이슬람 근본주의 세력인 알카에다가 미국 여객기 아메리칸 에어라인을 납치해서 워싱턴에 있는 펜타곤과 또 맨하탄에 있는 세계 무역센터를 공격하면서 2,996명을 사망하게 하고 또 27,000여 명을 부상하게 하는 아주 엄청난 일이 벌어지죠. 그야말로 앞으로 일어날 일들을 미리 모든 것을 알고 있었다는 듯이 아주 자세하게 써놓은 이 책은 2002년도에 이 책이 발매되면서 출판된 지 24시간도 안 돼서 초판이 전량 판매되고요. 그 이후로 한 달 동안 모두 9대를 인쇄를 할 만큼 아주 굉장히 선풍적인 인기를 끌었습니다. 2달도 안 되는 동안에 약 190여 개의 TV 프로그램과 또 라디오 프로그램의 인터뷰에 초대가 돼서 그야말로 미국에서는 유명 작가, 스타 작가의 반열에 올라서게 되죠. 그 후에 이분은 중동 문제 전문가로서 여러 유력 정치인들의 중동 정책 자문위원으로서 활동을 했고요. 그 후로 지금까지 모두 17권의 넌픽션 소설을 쓰면서 그야말로 미국에서는 초대박 베스트셀러 작가가 되었습니다. 그 사람이 바로 조엘 로젠버그라고 하는 메시아닉 유대인이죠. 지금은 가족들과 함께 미국에서 이스라엘 예루살렘으로 이주해서 살고 있는데요. 오늘은 브래드TV 개국 10주년을 맞이해서 특별 게스트로 이 조엘 로젠버그와 함께 미국 문제, 이스라엘 문제, 그리고 중동 문제에 대해서 좀 더 자세하게 들어보는 그런 시간을 갖도록 하겠습니다. 조엘, nice to meet you.
Good to meet you, sir.
사실 이제 조엘하고 저하고는 그 브래드TV가 시작되기 전인 10년 전에 미국 뉴저지에서 한번 만난 적이 있어요. 그 후로 이제 10년이라는 세월이 지나면서 뭐 저에게도 많은 변화가 있었지만 조엘도 지난 10년 동안 많은 변화가 있었죠.
That's true, and I'm so honored to see you and welcome back to Jerusalem.
지금 제가 와 있는 곳이 예루살렘에 있는 TVN 방송국이에요. 와서 보니까 이 뒤쪽에 시온산도 보이고 성전산도 보이고 또 멀리 올리브산도 보이는 아주 근사한 이 스튜디오인데 이 TVN 스튜디오에서 조엘이 매주 이렇게 방송 촬영을 한다라고 이야기 들었습니다. 주로 어떤 내용으로 여기서 촬영을 하시는지요?
Yeah, absolutely. Happy to talk about it. First of all, it is a beautiful location. No other television network in all of Israel or the United States or Europe or Asia has a facility with that view. So we're very fortunate. About 2.5 years ago, Matt Crouch, the president of Trinity Broadcasting Network, TBN, invited me to come to Dallas, and we'd never met. And he said, Joel, I'm really interested in starting a weekly prime time television show with you because I'm interested in you as a journalist, as an author, and you are a unique evangelical Jewish person who has a perspective on Israel and the Arab Muslim world. You've known Prime Minister Netanyahu. You know all the opposition leaders. You've been invited to bring evangelical delegations to meet with King Abdullah in Jordan, President El-Sisi in Egypt, the leaders of the United Arab Emirates and Bahrain and Morocco, and you have met twice for hours and hours with Saudi's next king, Mohammed bin Salman. That this is not a normal thing for anybody, much less someone who isn't a president or a prime minister or a foreign minister or an intelligence chief. You're an evangelical writer. And we had started a digital news organization in 2020 called All Israel News, allisrael.com, providing the first ever daily digital news and analysis by Israeli evangelicals and Messianic Jews for the world's Christians all over the world. That's what caught his eye, that we were doing this. It was like, well, that's really good. There's nothing like that. Shouldn't we turn that into a TV show? Now, I said, Matt, I've got a face for radio. You shouldn't put me on television. You know, I'm overweight, I'm old, I don't know. I don't know if I should be on television. And he just laughed and said, no, let's create this show. One more thing, he said, do you realize, Joel, that in the 75 years, or a little bit less at that time, of Israel's modern prophetic existence, no American television network has ever done a weekly prime time news and analysis show from Israel. And I hadn't really thought about that, but I thought, well, that's a good point. He goes, well, we should do it. TBN doesn't do news and analysis historically. We do music and worship and teaching, because I think we're moving in a new direction, and I'd like you to help. And so I prayed about it. I thought, I don't know if I have the experience for that or the time, but my board told me I should do it. I prayed about it. The Lord confirmed it. So yeah, it's been a big change, but very, very exciting. And I think now, after October 7th, it's become enormously helpful by God's grace for Christians all over the world who speak English. Well, we do have a new Korean translation site at allisrael.com. You can see the Korean flag, click on it, and there you go.
이제 본격적으로 좀 이스라엘 현안 문제에 대해서 질문을 드리겠습니다. 지금 뭐 이스라엘 현안 문제는 워낙 뭐 다양하게 쌓여 있는 것들이 많이 있지만 우선 그 전쟁 얘기를 좀 해야 될 것 같아요. 2023년도 10월 7일 날 하마스가 이스라엘을 기습 공격했습니다. 뭐 군사력으로 봤을 때는 당연히 이스라엘이 압도적이죠. 당연히 하마스가 이스라엘을 이길 수 없을 거라는 것을 분명히 알고 있었을 텐데도 불구하고 하마스가 이스라엘을 기습 공격한 이유는 뭐라고 생각하고 또 그 공격한 목적을 하마스가 달성했다라고 보시는지요?
Good questions. Difficult questions. All right, there's a few ways to answer that. The first is that Hamas's objective is to destroy the entire state of Israel and kill every Jew and Christian in this country or push us out of the region. And this is stated very explicitly in the Hamas Charter, its original document, which was ratified in September of 1988. So that's what we know because they say it. That's what they want. Okay. Now you're right that Hamas doesn't have the military capabilities to accomplish the annihilation of Israel by itself. Moreover, they deceived Israel very effectively by making it seem for the last few years that they were settling down. They just wanted to govern the Gaza Strip. They didn't have an intention to attack. Maybe other Palestinian factions would attack, but it wasn't them. And they began to make Israeli leaders think, all right, maybe that problem is a problem to be managed, or a tension to be managed, but not a problem to be solved. But Hamas had several other secret weapons. The first, and it's based on their strategy. The strategy was not to send in 20 terrorists or 100, but to send in almost 4,000. Basically a brigade or a division maybe. And to do it all at once on a day when Israel is resting and quiet on a holiday. What's more, it seems clear that Hamas had gotten approval from Iran's regime, and Hamas leaders thought that Iran was going to give a green light to Hezbollah, the much larger, much stronger terror organization that's funded by Iran, armed by Iran, trained by Iran, and directed by Iran in Lebanon. So the theory was, get Israel to lower its guard, pick a day that's quiet and a holiday, then attack with over 3,000, closer to 4,000 terrorists all at once, and make it so bad that Israel has to invade. And in invading, Hamas would surround itself with civilians. So the more civilians that die and wind up on television, this will make Israel look terrible. That Hamas would also take hostages, which would complicate Israel's freedom of movement, and the hope by Hamas leaders Yahya Sinwar and Mohammed Deif and others was that then Lebanon, Hezbollah in Lebanon would, within a day or two, immediately invade and attack with missiles and soldiers also. Most of that worked, but Hamas was unable to get Hamas to commit to actually invading Israel. This was an act of God, because if Hezbollah had moved simultaneously with Hamas, or within a day or two, Israel had almost no soldiers on that northern border. 10 years ago, when you and I first met, Hezbollah actually released a video. They publicly announced they were going to invade the Galilee region, northern Israel, and take it over. And they showed how they were going to do it in the video. I've seen the video. If Hezbollah had invaded Israel at the same moment or close to the same moment as Hamas, we would be fighting to liberate Galilee. But God blocked them. Maybe Iran didn't tell them. Maybe Hamas went too early. It's not clear, but a two-pronged attack from north and south simultaneously would have been so horrific. I don't think it would have destroyed the country, but it would have been close. I mean, it would have been like dangerously so bad, nothing like anything Israel has ever experienced. So as bad as it was on October 7th, it would appear that the larger strategic plan was much worse. And therefore, these are the ways that Hamas leaders believe they could compensate, offset their limited capacity compared to Israel. One last point, which is important, is this is called asymmetric warfare. If you take on a larger enemy, man to man, you're going to lose. But if you attack a larger army in a way that uses your advantages and plays to the larger team's weakness, you can inflict enormous damage, and your main damage that you're trying to pull off probably isn't to kill every Jew and Christian here. It's to make Israel look horrible in the eyes of the entire world, cause the world to turn against Israel, and to blow up any prospect of an Israeli-Saudi peace deal, which was the conversation all fall of last year. And if the Saudis made peace with Israel, this would have been the most historic moment in the history of the Middle East, because Indonesia was going to be next, and that's the largest Muslim country in the world. And so Iran's regime feared that if Israel is welcomed by almost everybody in the region, they will be seen as a friend and an ally of everybody who's freedom-loving in the world. And that's what in Iran that made them angry and scared. So they set into motion this plan, but I believe the prayers of millions of evangelical Christians stopped the plan from being as bad as was originally designed.
하마스의 기습 공격 이후에 이스라엘은 곧바로 하마스와 이제 전쟁을 시작을 했어요. 그러면서 완전히 하마스를 박멸하겠다 이렇게 이제 선언을 했는데, 제가 보기에는 그게 쉬워 보이지는 않는데, 이스라엘은 정말로 하마스를 완전히 박멸할 수 있을 거라고 보시는지, 아니면 이번 전쟁을 통해서 이스라엘의 최종 목표는 어떤 거라고 생각을 하시는지요?
It's a good question. Another good question. Yes, Prime Minister Netanyahu announced that the goal was to get the hostages back, to eliminate Hamas's capacity to ever attack Israel again this way from Gaza, and the total destruction and defeat of Hamas. And that question of, is that possible? Yeah, it's possible, but it requires a lot of time. And Hamas is gambling on the idea that Israel doesn't have that time, that the world will force Israel to stop, and that Hamas's leaders can only survive, not win, but survive, and then retake over Gaza over their amount of time, then they will be seen as the victors, and Israel will be seen as the losers, and that Israel will be considered a pariah country, or a country that's horrible, that people don't want to do business with, they don't want to travel to, they don't want to invest in. This would be a huge victory for Hamas and for the Iranian regime. And so I guess the question now is, can Israel fight the war in such a way as to at least destroy the capabilities, the military capabilities, shut down every tunnel, every smuggling tunnel, find every or most batches of weapons and all these things. But Hamas is an idea. This is the biggest problem. It's part of the Muslim Brotherhood terrorist organization and ideology that started in Egypt in the early 1920s. So the problem, and the Muslim Brotherhood is spread all over the region, and it's considered illegal in most Arab Muslim countries, including Saudi Arabia, United Arab Emirates, Bahrain, and so forth. So the idea of Hamas is very hard to defeat. For every soldier, terrorist, whatever that you kill or capture, you run the risk that 10 others are going to become inspired to join. But what other choice do you have? If you crush them, you might also break the ideology. You may convince the people of Gaza that they have been terribly misled by Hamas, that Hamas has brought satanic destruction upon them, and that the Palestinians of Gaza should reject Hamas, reject the idea, and move to a peaceful coexistence with Israel. Which way is that going to go? I don't think anybody in Israel knows. Only God knows. I will say one other thing, we can get back to this later, but if Israel can at least defeat Hamas now and make it safe, then I think Christians need to be praying for thousands of Arab, former Muslim, now follower of Jesus, missionaries to swarm, I want to say invade, but move literally into Gaza and preach the gospel and plant churches. Because in this moment, maybe, by the grace of God, the people of Gaza realize that Hamas is bringing death and despair, and that Jesus will provide them life and hope, right? This is John 10:10. Satan comes as a thief to rob, kill, and destroy, Jesus said. But Jesus says, I came that they may have life and have it abundantly. So Christians need a different foreign policy than just praying that Israel be safe, that Palestinians would be free, and that Hamas would be destroyed. That we should pray for all of those things and the healing of both peoples. But we should pray for more. We should have a higher kingdom objective. I don't think most Christians are thinking that way yet, but if the praying people of Korea, who are some of the greatest, maybe the greatest prayer warriors on the planet, who have been through such trauma yourselves, if they make this their mission, Lord, liberate Gaza, not from Israel, but from Hamas and from Satan, and let people come to Jesus. Open their eyes, open their hearts. This could be the greatest spiritual revolution in our lifetime.
지난 10월 7일 하마스의 이스라엘 기습 공격은 이스라엘 국민들에게 굉장히 큰 충격을 주었습니다. 그 현장을 이스라엘에서 다 지켜본 조엘께서는 그 후로 이스라엘 국민들의 어떤 신앙심이라든가 영적인 변화가 있다라고 이렇게 생각이 되시는지요? 10월 7일 이전보다 10월 7일 이후에 이스라엘 국민들이 더 종교심이 생긴다든가 더 나가서 예수님을 믿는 사람들이 늘어난다든가 어떤 변화가 있다라고 이렇게 느껴지십니까?
It depends where you live, it seems. Brad, I would say that I think that Israel is being shaken, very deeply. This is part of the prophecies of Amos, the book of Amos in the Old Testament, chapter 9, verse 9. Amos 9:9. God says, I will shake the whole house of Israel. We're being shaken like almost never before, at least since 1948. In that shaking, why is God shaking us? Because we're not paying attention to Him. We're not paying attention to the Bible, and we're not paying attention to the Son of God and the Messiah who God sent for us. Our Jewish team doesn't want to hear this, but they don't even really, most people don't even want to read the Bible or even talk about God. God is not happy with that. I don't believe we're seeing a judgment of Israel right now. I think we're seeing a judgment of Gaza, of the Palestinians. I say that with sadness, but in Genesis chapter 12, God says, I will bless those who bless thee, and those who curse you, I will curse. If you curse Israel for 76 years straight, without a break, when you say, I'm going to kill you all, I'm going to destroy you all, I'm going to give my children to do that, there's a consequence. And we're seeing, sadly, but we're seeing a judgment of Gaza. We're not supposed to rejoice in it, but we have to be aware that's what's happening. Now, God can show mercy amidst judgment. But in Israel, I would say he's shaking us. So what we're finding is, what we hear from pastors along the southern borders is that people they want to talk about God. They want to talk about the Bible. And some, more than ever, want to talk about Yeshua. That's the Hebrew name of Jesus. That's amazing. Those pastors in the South, they are telling us that more people want to talk about Jesus than they've ever seen in their entire lives. That's amazing. It doesn't make a lot of headlines, except on All Israel News and on my TV show, The Rosenberg Report, and now BradTV. In the North, the same thing. We travel and crisscross all the churches in the North, and we keep hearing people say, people want to talk about God. They want to talk about the Bible. They're confused. They're wondering, why would God let this happen? Is there a God? And they will talk about Jesus. They want to, more than ever. Not everybody, but more than ever. That's encouraging. Now, what we also hear is that if you're near Tel Aviv, if you're in that central Mediterranean corridor of high technology and very secular people, they're not that interested. First, they don't feel as shaken as the people in the North and South. They're more secular to begin with, and their life is pretty good. It's been challenging, but they don't feel really threatened. So people are having different reactions. Now, I've sat with Orthodox Jews who are so angry at God, they wear a kippah, a yarmulke, they keep kosher, but they are so angry at God that they don't even know how to pray anymore. How can God let this happen? But I also was just at, I was covering the visit by former U.S. Ambassador to the United Nations, Nikki Haley, right, who just ran for president and now seems to be auditioning to maybe be President Trump's Secretary of State if Trump were to win. The reason I say is because Nikki Haley was talking to a young woman who survived the Hamas massacre at what was called the Nova Music Festival in the South. Thousands of young people in this party over a couple days, dancing, singing, and then hundreds of Hamas terrorists came and just killed them, raped them, tortured them, and took them hostage. Nikki Haley met with one of the women's survivors. I covered that, and I interviewed that woman after she chatted with Nikki Haley. She told me she's totally secular, that didn't think she even believed in God. At that music festival was a big statue of Buddha.
I know.
Yeah, most people don't know that, but it was not exactly a Christian music festival. But she said when she hid in one of the trailers where some of the operations staff worked, she expected to die, and at any moment, she could hear her friends being murdered and raped, women and men. Her phone battery had died, but she found a phone in the trailer. She opened it, and she said, Joel, I should have called or texted my parents and my friends, but the first thing I did was went to Google and searched Tehillim. That means the Psalms. Here's a secular woman fearing she's about to die, and she's looking to the Bible on a phone, and she'd never done it in her past. She doesn't even remember what Psalm she was reading because she doesn't know the Bible. But I'm just giving you an example. Something is happening in this country. And I think Christians, we need to be praying more, not just for victory. That's true, of course. We need to pray for spiritual victory, that more eyes are opening, more hearts are opening, that more people are hungry to find God. Because if you seek and you keep seeking, Jesus promises you will find. And the church needs to be strong, so we need to pray for boldness and compassion. It's a sensitive moment to share the gospel, but in all the bad news in my country, people need the good news. And that's really important. So I think something important is happening spiritually, but it's far too early to have enough data to tell us, is an awakening happening? I can't say that, but a shaking is happening. It's biblical. And the last thing I would say about that would be, I think Israelis have forgotten that we have a good shepherd. And I'm not even citing the New Testament at the moment. I'm citing Psalm 23, right? King David, 3,000 years ago says, the Lord is my shepherd, right? Most Israelis either don't know that, or they don't believe that, or they've forgotten that God is our shepherd. So what we're watching is sheep without a shepherd. What we're watching is sheep wandering away from the shepherd or rebelling, but most I think are just wandering. They don't remember there is a shepherd, or they don't care, or they don't think there's a consequence or a benefit. The problem is that the Bible is clear. It's not a neutral environment. It's not that you stick with your shepherd as a sheep and, that's a nice life. But if you don't, there's no problem. No, the Bible teaches that there are barbaric beasts, ravenous wolves who want to eat and attack and destroy and kill the sheep. So I think it's not that God has sent these wolves. He warned us the wolves are there. He said, I will protect you as your shepherd. That's my job, that's my heart. But if you wander from me, there are consequences, and hopefully that will bring you back to me, and my arms are always open. So I think that's where we are. Sorry, that's a long answer, but that's a good question. And not every media person that is covering Israel, in fact, almost none, are asking the spiritual heart of what's really happening here.
자세한 답변 감사드리고요. 지금 미국을 포함한 전 세계의 그 많은 정치 지도자들이 이스라엘을 향해서 팔레스타인을 국가로 인정해라, 그리고 또 두 국가 해법을 받아들여라, 이렇게 요구를 하고 있지만 이스라엘의 베냐민 네타냐후 총리는 아직까지 절대로 두 국가 해법은 받아들일 수 없다, 이렇게 이야기를 하고 있습니다. 조엘의 생각, 두 국가 해법에 대한 생각은 어떤지 좀 설명해 주시죠.
Sure, of course. But you keep asking big, deep questions. They're not the simple questions. So these are like doctoral dissertation type questions, but I'll try to keep it concise. But thank you. Benjamin Netanyahu, as our prime minister, is actually on the record as supporting a two-state solution. He first said it in 2009, and he repeated it most recently in 2020 when then President Donald Trump laid out his mother of all peace deals, right? The deal of the century, which involved a two-state solution. It's a creative solution. It's a demilitarized state, right? It's consistent with Netanyahu saying, look, it can be a state, but it can't have an army. Israel needs to control the airspace, but we can work together and Netanyahu is very enthusiastically supportive of that. Now, does he really believe in a two-state solution, or does he just say he does to keep the international leaders at bay? I don't know, but I'm just saying officially he's for one if it's structured in a way that doesn't threaten the existence of Israel. That's the first point that's important. The second point is he's saying, look, right now, I don't see how I'm not going to support that now. Hamas is a genocidal terror group that has attacked us and tried to rape our women, burn our children alive in their homes, slaughter grandparents and so forth. So no. And in the West Bank, what is biblically Judea and Samaria, Jesus called it, Jesus didn't call it the West Bank. Nobody called it the West Bank until the late part of the 20th century. It's Judea and Samaria, right? Acts chapter 1, verse 8, Jesus says, you will be my witnesses. Where? In Jerusalem, Judea, Samaria, and even to the ends of the earth, even Korea. Yeah. So Netanyahu is saying in Judea and Samaria, in the Palestinian Authority, which the world calls the West Bank, what's happening? Well, the president of the Palestinian Authority is Mahmoud Abbas. Some people call him Abu Mazen, that is the father of a son named Mazen. He's about 86, 87 years old. He's in the 18th year of his 4-year term. He doesn't hold elections. He's a dictator, and he's corrupt. The latest poll by the credible Palestinian polling agency says that 89%, 9 out of 10 Palestinians say that Abu Mazen should step down immediately because he's corrupt. Who you're making a state with? A terror organization that's committed us with savagery and demonic barbarism on October 7th? You're gonna make a state there? You're gonna make a state in the West Bank with a government that's not even legitimate by its own people. Forget the Israelis. You have countries right now, Spain, Ireland, all these countries announcing we recognize the state of Palestine. Really? 90% of the people don't want the leader? It's a total shambles. What's this state that you're recognizing? This is Netanyahu's point. And almost every single Israeli now agrees with Netanyahu. Now, not every Israeli likes Netanyahu. That's different. Not every Israeli wants Netanyahu to stay. That's different. The point is the country, left, center, right, are totally unified right now. No Palestinian state in the foreseeable future. Even people that were the biggest supporters of two-state solution are like, not anymore. How can we possibly think that way? But the world is insistent. It feels like wisdom to the world. And so there's a lot of pressure. There's a lot of pressure.
문제는 이제 전쟁이 끝난 이후에 가자지구를 어떻게 관리할 것인지, 누가 관리할 것인지, 이게 지금 제일 큰 문제로 떠오르고 있어요. 뭐 어떤 사람들은 유엔이 들어가서 관리해야 된다, 또는 뭐 팔레스타인 자치정부가 관리해야 된다, 이런 얘기도 있고, 또 이스라엘의 정통 유대인 정치인들은 그 안에 가자지구 안에 유대인 정착촌을 또 만들어야 된다, 이렇게 얘기를 하고 있거든요. 조엘께서는 그 전쟁이 끝난 후에 가자지구를 어떻게 관리하는 것이 서로를 위해서 좋을 것이다, 이렇게 생각을 하십니까?
Well, my main perspective is what the followers of Jesus Christ should do, because that's clearest to me. The people of Gaza are sheep without a shepherd, or they have wicked false prophets, false shepherds, trying to destroy them, like out of the book of Ezekiel. I think it's Ezekiel 34. So the church, mostly Arab and Iranian Christians, ideally those who've come out of Islam and come radically, dramatically to faith in Jesus Christ and understand the very difficult transition out of Islam into faith in Jesus, need to sort of flood the zone, need to move there as, you know, to do humanitarian relief, to do reconstruction, to do non-profit NGOs, helping the people in practical ways, but also being a witness for Jesus among the Palestinian people. Ideally, Palestinians who come to faith in Jesus, who live outside the region, coming back to help. But it could be Iranian converts. Iranian converts are very bold when they go from Shia Islam to faith in Jesus. It's like Saul getting transformed radically by Jesus on the road to Damascus and becoming the greatest apostle, right? He was a religious terrorist. He happened to be Jewish, but he was a religious terrorist going to persecute Christians on the road to Damascus. And then God totally turned him around, and Jesus so transformed him by the power of the Holy Spirit that he became the greatest missionary in the entire Bible, right? So that's what we need. That's what the church should focus on primarily. Now, in terms of the politics, there's a lot of confusion, and I'm not advocating yet a solution. I don't see how Israel can relinquish security control for several years. Then they would need to work closely with Egypt. Egypt has the most influence and has a border and used to control Gaza. They used to occupy Gaza until 1967, right? So the Egyptians have a lot of influence there. And of course, President El-Sisi, whom I've met 4 times in Cairo, he hates the Muslim Brotherhood. So he's not a fan of Hamas. So he would have an interest in bringing Gaza into a quieter, peaceful, de-radicalized environment, right? The schools have been teaching hatred against Israel and the Jews for 75 years, 76 years. That has to get deprogrammed. The Saudis have a lot of experience with that. The Emiratis have a lot of experience with that, and so does Bahrain. So I think they all can help in terms of schooling. They've got money. Egypt doesn't have money. But all that money could flow through Egypt, which would make Egypt have an economic incentive to rebuild Gaza, but rebuild it carefully. But I think Israel will need security control for a while, I think years. And the question is, can Israel, the Egyptians, and the Sunni Arab states find a formula that they could all be happy with? Happy might not be the right word, but that they can all live with and think this can be effective. Because look, the Palestinians in Gaza could have a paradise. Israel withdrew in 2005. Every soldier, every civilian was pulled out of Gaza in 2005. And then Israeli Prime Minister Ariel Sharon said, there you go. We don't even want a peace treaty. We're leaving. You have beachfront property on the beautiful Mediterranean. You have trillions of cubic feet of natural gas right off your shores you could develop. Go build a Palestinian paradise. Instead, the Palestinians of Gaza elected Hamas, a terrorist organization, a genocidal terrorist organization, to lead them. And then there was never an election again, and they are reaping what they've sown. But now there's a chance for a reset. Now there's a chance for another start. A Singapore on the Mediterranean, a Dubai on the Mediterranean, a Korea. When you think of Korea having been completely or nearly completely destroyed and the people being devastated in the 1950s, you could think, well, that could have just left Korea an impoverished, angry, bitter country. Well, that's what happened in the North. But in the South, they said, okay, let's rebuild. Let's think differently. There was a spiritual revolution. People went from Buddhism or other types of religions to millions to faith in Jesus Christ. And they said, let's build our country. We care for our brothers and sisters in the North. There's nothing we can do about that right now. But let's not just sit here and whine and complain. Let's build a new Korea. And you did it. This is what's possible in Gaza. But it's going to take the power and mercy of God, because nothing else will make Gaza go in the right direction. No amount of UN money or Saudi money or Egyptian political help. None of that will work unless there's a transformation, a revolution inside Gaza. That's what I'm praying for. If Iran finally acquires nuclear weapons, builds them, the Iranian regime could do in 6 minutes, and that is to kill 6 million Jews. Look, this is a war that's coming. The war between Israel and Iran is coming. This could be an apocalyptic war, the worst in the history of the Middle East.